Wouldn't you be afraid of putting the word luxurious? Some people might say, oh, maybe I can't afford them.
Hey, Growth Techs, that is Anamargarita Baasch, a firm owner and architect from Venezuela with too many degrees to count, including an MBA and a master's in real estate development from Georgetown University. She's the principal of Baasch Gallegos Architects in Bethesda, Maryland, a high-end residential architecture firm. And hey there, I am Tyler Sumla, the creator of Growth Tech. Today, we are helping my friend Anna de-risk her business by addressing one big question. How can she diversify her projects beyond just one big client that currently accounts for 90% of the revenue? And you'll want to grab your notepad for this one because we dive into a step-by-step strategy that any firm can use to grow their client pipeline. But before we begin, a huge thanks to Gelt for sponsoring Season 2. They've made managing my business and personal taxes stress-free, and I highly, highly, highly recommend that you check them out at joingelt.com. Plus, be sure to mention Growth Tech when you schedule a consultation to get 10% off your first year with Gelt. And if this is your first time listening to the Growth Tech podcast, here's the gist. There are somewhere around 30,000 architecture firm owners and leaders in the US today alone, but there's virtually no place for them to chat about the question that fuels their business. How do I find, attract, and win the best clients for my firm? So that's why I created this podcast, to tackle your real questions so you can walk away with actionable insights. And if you like the podcast, then you'll love The Studio, which is a private membership for architecture leaders with steps, strategies, and support to grow your business. And actually, everyone in Season 2 is a member, which you'll hear about at the end of the episode. If you want a taste of what's inside The Studio, then be sure to join my free newsletter at growthatech.com/join, where I share free sales and marketing growth hacks with more than 10,000 architecture leaders every Sunday morning. So go and join right now and enjoy the show.
Let's jump into your question, Anna. What's the big question that you have coming into today?
What would you do if you were in our situation? Like you are busy working for a bigger client that is giving you a lot of, your 90% of your revenue, but at the same time you want to grow, you want to have your own clients, make more profit from those clients, and eventually expand to other markets, because we know that we have something that we haven't explored yet. We are in a market that is high-end residential, but in commercial for bigger projects, we could be a business, minority and women-owned business. And that's something that we haven't explored yet. We're in this market. We want to grow. So what would you do if you were in our situation and you want to grow? Will you continue in the same market? Will you change? Do you do something different to find new clients?
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'll say that I think this is a great situation to be in, because essentially with even though it's a little bit more risky, right? Because 90% of the revenue is coming from basically one source. That's definitely a risk, and you want to diversify away from that. But the fact that you have a good working relationship with the area where 90% of the revenue is coming in, and you have that 90% of revenue coming in, sounds like on a relatively consistent or at least reliable basis, such that you can then support the growth of your own firm. That's really an ideal situation. And I see it as almost being similar to architects today that are working in an office, and they're trying to moonlight to find their own client because they want to build their own firm. I see you as being a step ahead of that, right? Because you already have a practice established. You already have a name that you've started to build out in terms of business and operations in place. And you have that primary revenue coming in, so you have some stability. So it's a really good position to be in, I think, to begin thinking about, okay, how do we diversify our clients? Where should we focus our attention if we want to start growing our side of the business rather than just working for the one big client that we have?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, tell me a little bit about how the work, you mentioned a little bit earlier, but the work that you've done so far that hasn't been for that client, what has that work been, and how has that work come to you?
We did a house in North Potomac, and that client came. They are a family, a beautiful family. with two kids, and they came through a friend of Linda. He told her that those clients were calling him, and he moved out from the city, so he was no longer working here. It was another architect. He was no longer working here, and he wanted to give her this client. And she said, yeah, I would love to take it, but at the time she was alone. She had no business partner, and that's how I start working with her. Like, let's put together a team, let's focus on this, and let's build a beautiful project. And it's actually a beautiful project. Most of them have come from referrals from friends that most of them are architects, actually. Yeah, that they tell us, hey, I got this client and I cannot take it for any reason, and they give it to us.
How many architecture friends do you have like in your region that could potentially be feeding you projects like that?
We have received 3 so far.
Okay, that's awesome.
3 from friends that are architects, and we currently have been like networking and going to events and meeting new people and making new friends, because Linda is from El Salvador and I'm from Venezuela. Well, she's American because her mom is American. She was born and raised in El Salvador. So that's a challenge that we have, because we don't know that many people here. Our network is mainly related with Georgetown University and our families, like her husband and her mom, but her mom, like, they are mainly from American, but from El Salvador, and my husband and their friends. So we didn't like study here, we didn't grow here, and I think that's also a challenge. So lately we have been going to networking events, meeting new people, some of them from Latin America, some others from here, and we have received a few projects from those networking events. For instance, we went to a networking event from like expat with Linda, and this is a couple. She's married with an American as well, and she does beauty treatments, and she want us to make her new like beauty treatment salon. We haven't started yet, but she definitely to build this and want us to be the architect. So we're going to have the meeting next week. And the other one was a Mexican restaurant here in Washington, D.C. They are a couple as well, like American and Mexican, and they want us to do the architecture for their new restaurant here.
Yes. Is there a decently sized Latin American population where you're at?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess.
It's something really interesting to think about, because, usually we fall into these fears where we feel like, like maybe we can go too niche into something, right? But this idea of, two Latin American architects that have an architecture firm that does high-end residential and even high-end commercial projects for other Latin American families is pretty strong, because I'm not Latin American, obviously, right? But my understanding is that the community that you all have is really strong, right? So you kind of immediately, like, you're attracted to one another in these different ways. Like you find friends in those same groups in different ways, right? So like naturally, another Latin American family living in your area would probably want to work with Latin American architects in your
area. Yeah. Well, that will be a very small niche, Latin Americans that wants to build like high-end residential, because so far the high-end residential that we are building are not exactly for Latin Americans. The other Latin American that, we definitely have one that we built like an addition. It was high-end, it was modern, beautiful. They will start construction very soon. We design, they will start construction very soon. But I'm not sure how big is the market for the high-end residential for Latin American people, but that could be a good niche if it exists, like if it's big enough.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like are you tied down to only doing projects in your specific region, or do you have desire to kind of go beyond as well?
We can go beyond, because as I told you, we have friends in Florida. With Jim, he has license to work almost everywhere in the U.S. He has a project even in Alaska. So with Jim, we could partner with him and work everywhere. So far, we only have licensed in the DC metro area, DC, Maryland, and Virginia.
Okay, got it. Yeah. I think the first thing to figure out in this is be clear about who you want to target, right? Because then we can talk about how we want to target them. So you would talk about, oh, do we want to do commercial or residential? It sounds like you're kind of getting a mix of both right now. And I think that's okay because you're at the beginning phase. So I would kind of like assuming that you're actually interested in the work, right? So like only take work that you're interested in getting. But um, but I would kind of listen to both of these markets, like high-end residential, commercial projects, see where you are finding the most traction at, and then kind of go and double down on that one, assuming that you're also enjoying the work that you're getting from that, right? So there's a little bit of this that's like, hey, go out in the field, like spend the next 6 months, like being open to both of those projects and seeing which ones tend to work out best for you, which ones do you enjoy most working with, and then you can take the time to scale down and say, okay, if we want to, focus on commercial, then we seem to have more traction in this region. If we want to focus on residential, there's not much here, but we can get a lot in Florida, right? And so you just like have more clarity in how to make that decision.
Okay.
So I would say that. I don't know if there's one. It sounds to me like if I'm hearing you correctly, like you tell me if I'm wrong, right? But it sounds to me like you're more interested in the high end residential side, but you're happy to take on the commercial work at this time as it's coming in.
Well, I was trained in commercial, and Linda was trained in commercial. My experience abroad is mainly in commercial and in industrial, actually. Yes. But here I have been enjoying learning different construction systems. For instance, I had to relearn how to design many things because I was trained with different like styles, and here I had to learn like what is the American traditional, what are the different type of American traditional styles. So if someone wants a traditional American house and they want a like coffer ceiling, how is that coffer ceiling different from what I will do, and I have been enjoying learning because I just like learning. I enjoy that, but I see also a big opportunity in commercial because once you start in commercial, at the beginning you can do something small, but then you can find yourself doing something bigger and bigger, and that's something that I was trained for.
Yeah.
Not only as an architect, but also with the
real estate.
Yeah, development, the master's degree that we did in Georgetown. And I would love to see us competing in those waters, Probably later on, I feel that we don't have the scale so far to compete on that level. But I would love to have eventually the two markets, like the high-end residential and some sort of commercial very well defined. For instance, like, I don't know, apartment buildings, condo, which is residential, but it's also a business model. So you design, you build, and either you sell or rent because it's a business. That's the commercial side of those.
Yeah, is that just like kind of like a developer model? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
So
is that the type of commercial work that you're most interested in doing? Like essentially, like multifamily commercial work?
That'll be good, but that's a dream so far.
That's a dream. Yeah. What's an example of a type of commercial project that you're also interested in, aside from the multifamily?
Well, the projects that we currently have, we did. This was a client that contacted us through Real Architects. We did meeting room at the Bishop O'Connell High School here in the DC area. We did also, we're going to do this spa salon for beauty treatments and the restaurant as well. So those are projects that, even starting from the conversation, I enjoy them. I understand that we need to focus. At the beginning, we say yes to everyone, but at some point we should start focusing and like doing the projects that aligns with our vision and our market and our strategy.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. If you had to choose either to begin pursuing commercial right now or to begin pursuing high-end residential right now, which one of those would you choose?
Oh, wow. That's interesting because Linda will go definitely for the high-end residential and I will go for commercial. So,
Okay,
yeah.
that's really funny. Well, so then even what I said before is probably more true, right? Like getting into the market, getting a sense, understanding where you have the most traction probably makes the most sense. I will say that I think for the next 6 months, I think it makes the most sense from a marketing perspective to choose one of those to focus on. Not to say that you won't accept the work if it comes in and it is commercial or it is residential, but to choose one of those to focus on because it makes it a lot easier for you to market yourself and to have those conversations like when you're going to the networking events, right? Because naturally you tell someone that you're an architect and the next question that you get is, oh, what type of work do you do? Right? So like second question always, what type of work do you do?
Yes.
And ideally you have a clear and concrete answer to that, right? So I think choosing one or the other for the next 6 months makes the most sense, and being super clear about who it is that so you know what type of work that you're doing, right? So I do high residential, or we do multifamily residential projects or something like that, for a specific subset of the market and primary differentiator. Like, do you have an idea of what differentiates the way that you all work versus some of the other firms in the area?
No, because I don't think that being like a woman-owned business make us any different. We should be actually different somehow.
Yeah.
No, we do work with our clients like hand to hand from the beginning to the end, involved in every aspect of the project, until they are comfortable with the price and schedule, and we do renderings for them and we help them select all the finishes, and we also we help them select the contractor. Our goal for every client is to make them feel that this project is a pleasure for them, because it can be chaotic for many people. Like building their house or renovating their house can be, is stressing for everyone. Having something that is not organized in your house, or someone all the time with a hammer that you can hear. So we try to make this process as pleasant as it can be when they are working with us. I don't know if that's a differentiator. I think other architecture firms might do that as well. But that includes being on time, being responsive. Once they send us an email, send them their answer right away. Making sure that our processes are well established so that we're not going to make any mistake. And if we don't know something, we will figure out for them. So I think that's important. That's part of the experience that we want to give the client all the time.
Yeah.
Make them feel like this is a pleasure.
Yeah, a pleasurable experience.
When it comes to running a successful architecture firm, taxes play a huge role in your financial strategy. Even if you've already filed, being proactive this year can significantly lower your future liabilities. And now that I'm working with Gelt, I finally feel like I have a partner I can trust to handle everything from my business to my personal taxes, and I'm excited to collaborate then for this season of Growth Attack. Think of Gelt as the ultimate CPA for firm owners. Their tech platform provides personalized guidance to help maximize deductions, tax credits, and savings. Plus, their in-house team of expert CPAs offers tailored tax strategies designed to minimize risk and grow your wealth. And when I first onboarded with Gelt, they shared strategies that saved me tens of thousands of dollars. So if you're ready for a premium, proactive strategy to optimize your firm's financial health, you have to check out Gelt. Go to joingelt.com and mention Growth Attack So you get 10% off your first year with Gelt.
It's funny. You said something there that made me laugh a little bit, which is that I don't know if this is what other architects focus on too. Um, because the reality is that other architects might say that maybe in a closed meeting, right? Maybe they're all saying the same things. But marketing is very much a name and claim business, right? So architects, I think, notoriously rely on imagery and portfolio to tell the entire story of the work and the value they bring, rather than actually saying the words, right? So, for you, the idea that we create high-end residential homes for growing families without the additional stress, right? Or we create high-end residential homes for growing families without going over budget, delivered on time within 12 months. Like anything like that just makes it really clear and concrete that main thing that you do. Or we make the creation of your high-end residential home for growing families pleasurable, easy. I think framing it in that way is super helpful, because then that targets, who you're going after, whether that's, and I was just throwing in growing families. I'm not sure if that's what your target market is, but growing families. Then you say that you're doing the high-end residential projects, and you also include like a differentiator. And I explicitly, I really liked that you were pulling emotion into it, right? Because stress is such a huge thing. It is a stressful process to run through that. But if you have a supportive architect that's there to guide you through it, hold your hand through the process, then it definitely makes that much less stressful, because you are the one that's carrying, like the architect is the one that's carrying the load, bearing the weight of that stress, ideally, and taking it off of the client.
Yeah, definitely. We're the owner representative in all this process. And high-end residential we're talking about luxury in residential. And that's an experience. All the luxury is an experience. You're not just buying something. It's something that has certain characteristic, and that characteristic are part of being something unique. And since it's unique, it's custom made, and it involves a type of service, and that type of service is something that makes you feel good when you are buying.
We create high-end residential homes for growing families that want a supportive experience, that want a luxurious experience, right? I don't know. There's something there, but I like the things that you're saying. These are things that, it's definitely not what every architect says. I'll say that, right? But there are things that you can claim, right, in your market to say, no, we are the ones that people come to if they want that really, guided and intentional and unique experience of building their home. You can claim that space. I mean, especially even if someone else is saying it, you can still say it differently. But I think the more important thing is there that you choose what to say and that you actually say it, right? So whatever that statement is, you take what we were just saying, you put that on your website, you put that on the business card. Someone asks you what type of work that you do. Oh, we do high-end residential for growing families that, really want a supportive and luxurious experience throughout the building of the home, right? And that becomes very clear and a very attractive message, and it will also then attract the right people.
Yeah. Wouldn't you be afraid that for the fact that putting the word luxurious, some people might say, oh, maybe I can't afford them. And it's just, probably that could happen.
Yeah. I mean, the specific word choices there, you can play with what the different ones are. But at the same time, my actual response to that would be, well, if that's the response, then maybe they wouldn't be the right fit for you anyways. Right? Because that's why you have to be careful about what that word choice is, because there is also a qualification process in it that ideally would be saving you time. Right. So it's not necessarily about increasing we will be increasing the volume of the leads that you're getting, but in the end, it's not about the volume of the leads. It's about the quality of those leads. Right. Because especially with just you and Linda here being the partners, that means that every time that you have, all the time that you have to spend on business development with people that set a meeting with you, and you see if there's an existing project there, or if they have the budget for it, and these different these different parts of the discovery and qualification process, that takes a lot of time. So ideally, the ones that are coming in are super are already mostly qualified, and easier for you to then convert into clients. Essentially, does that make sense?
It does. A lot.
Cool. So I would take, I would craft what that message is. I would put it on your website. I'd use it when you're going to these networking events to explain who you are and what you do, right? I would reach out to the existing network that you have there locally and just say, hey, Linda and I, we did start a firm. We've decided to start taking on our own high-end residential clients. These are the types of clients that we're looking for. Do you happen to know of anyone that might be interested in working with us? Or do you happen to know of anyone that we should speak to? Right. That's a really easy way to just kind of get it out there. And I know that you said you don't know that many people around you yet, but if it's just even the people that you do know, even if that's 10 people, like you might get a meeting or two out of that, right? And start discussions with that. But then I would also make a habit of it when you're going to these network events. After you talk about yourself, you might not be talking with someone there that would be a client for you. But at some point in the conversation or at the end of the conversation, hey, yeah, this is the type of work that you do. Do you happen to know of anyone that we should talk to? Right? Like just make a habit of kind of asking everyone. Is there someone that we should talk to? Because either you'll start hearing the same names over and over again, or you'll be introduced to someone else. And getting a warm introduction to an architect, or a service provider is always going to be more beneficial than you reaching out cold to them. Right. So anytime that you can use that network to make those warm connections, you're going to be in a better spot. And then, so we've established, okay, choose the market that you want to focus on. Not that you can't take on the other one, but I would choose one or the other that you at least want to present yourself as, right, initially. And you can always change that afterwards. And then you want to take that message that you create. You want to make sure that you're using it for the networking. You want to make sure that you're putting it on your website. You want to make sure that whenever someone asks you what type of work that you're doing, you put it on your business card, that's what you're saying. Then you also want to use that same idea with your existing network that you have today, right? To reach out to them and say, this is what we're doing. We're starting to take on these new projects. Do you happen to know of anyone that might be interested? Which is a very soft ask, right? You're not asking them if they're interested. You're just asking, kind of for their help. Basically, you're asking for their network, right? To see if they have anyone that you can use. And then the other side of that, we're kind of moving in order, I'd say, of ease, right? So establish what your market is. Reach out to people that you already know to see if they know anyone. And then there's the one where you're reaching out to the people that you don't know to see if there is any opportunity for collaboration, right? So specifically with high-end residential, if we're talking about that one as an example, actually it works the same for commercial too, but there's different builders and developers that are doing the high-end residential projects or the commercial projects as well. So a really simple thing that you can do there in terms of cold outreach is just Googling and making a list of all of the companies that you find, or even as you're driving around your area, that are building these high-end residential homes, and reaching out to them or stopping by their office to say, hey, I'm an architect. I really appreciate the work that you've been doing around town. Was curious, if you're working with any architects today. Most of them are going to be working with architects, right? Obviously, they're going to have somebody working with. The question is, how's that experience going for them? Are they looking for more architects to work with, right? Is there any room for improvement in the architects that they're working with today, right? Because basically what you want to do is the goal of those conversations is just to get a meeting where you can then present the opportunity to collaborate, share leads. We're looking for good contractors to work with, right? And we're also looking for clients, because the reality is that even for high-end residential, clients will still sometimes go to the builder first before they think about going to the architect.
Yes.
Right. which is
Yes.
not what they tell us is going to happen in school, but that's pretty much exactly what happens.
Yeah.
So building relationships with them, that's another, in my opinion, a really stable and a really healthy pipeline to find contractors and builders that you really enjoy working with, because that's a mutually beneficial relationship. You bring them work when you can recommend them for specific clients that are coming to you. And if they get a client that comes to them, obviously they can't do that by themselves. They also need to hire an architect or recommend an architect. So having, being on their good side is a good thing. So I would definitely pursue that. And that's true really of whether you're doing, again, residential or commercial. Because commercial is the same way. Find out who the companies are that are doing the commercial projects in your area that you've been seeing. Reach out to them, see if they're working with architects, what are architects they're working with, what the experience has been like, if there's room for improvement, and basically just try to identify ways that you can add value to the process that's already happening for them today. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes. I like that because it's thinking what we're strive for our clients, but to move it also to our contractors. Yes.
Yeah.
Like if it's a pleasure for the client to work with us, like let's make also a pleasure for the contractor to work with us.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And they're also like, I mean, they really are a strong pipeline, contractors, whether we like to believe it or not, right? Because they're at a different point in the process and they went through a very different experience to get to where they're at. They do hold a lot of weight, typically even in the decision-making process, depending on where a client goes. And so, having good relationships with good contractors and good builders in your area can make a big difference.
We have good relationship with good contractors in our area.
That's
yes,
awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which also is another, like for that warm outreach that I was talking about, right? Like reach out to them, say we are doing residential now, and maybe you've already told them before, but like do it again. Remind them. Like, you can't tell them too many times.
Okay.
That you're doing that, and then the last part, right? So we kind of we're like slowly breaking this down. It's like you're doing warm, and then you're doing okay. We're going to go to the ones that could potentially be partners for us that also have their own pipeline where they could be referring to us. And by the way, I also think that other architecture firms fall into that category too. Like you mentioned, you've gotten a lot of referrals from existing architecture firms. So if there are other like high-end residential firms in your area that maybe they're like super high-end, right? Like they're very high-end, but so they don't take on those $1 or $2 million homes. Versus, that's something that you guys would do, right? So you can go to them and say, hey, I know like, sounds like you guys are busy. You're probably taking on these larger projects. If you ever get a smaller one, we'd love to talk about, how we can work together on that, or we'd love to take that on and do those different things. So I think those are usually opportunities, right? You don't want to go to ones that are going to be going after the exact same market as you, but the ones that kind of get fall over, or anytime that you meet another architect and you can tell them this is the type of work that we do. If you ever get people coming to you for it, right, then feel free to send them our way. Super helpful because we will all, even, which by the way, even after you are very clear with your messaging and you say, we do high-end residential for growing families, without going over budget, you're still going to get restaurants, coming to you and being like, will you do my restaurant too? Right.
Of course.
Yeah. So it still happens, right? Because there's the fear that like, oh my gosh, I get too specific, no one's going to come to me. And it's actually kind of like that's not totally true. If they like your work and they like the clarity in your messaging, they're still going to ask you if there's an opportunity there.
Just don't put it on the website, but you do it.
Yeah, that's right. Not on the website, but you still do that, right? Yeah. Exactly. And so then the last one, I think the most difficult one, is to reach out directly to the owners and start building relationships with them. And by owners, I mean, like if you're going on the commercial side, right, you're going to the restaurants and introducing yourself to them and saying, we're architects. We see, I don't know, space looks a little bit outdated. I don't know if you've ever thought about updating it. Like this is something that we'd be able to help you with. And then same thing on the high-end residential side. That's where, that's a little bit harder one to do, but putting yourself in the places and locations where people that typically, would be thinking about a high-end residential project would be, right? And finding different ways to network with them is usually really, there's a lot of opportunity there. So you can think about, for example, if we're talking about high-end residential, like actually there's a little bit of overlap there with the commercial, because usually the people that do high-end residential are also business owners in some way, right? They own something. They're involved in the business scene locally. And so I was trying to, what do you call I can't think about it. What do you call the like community of business owners in a specific area? There's like a name for it.
I will call it a club.
There's a club, yeah, but there's usually like a.
But it's not a club. I know what you're.
There's like a local governance. I can't think of what it's called now. It's driving me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll usually like hold events, and you can pay whatever, like $300 a year to become a member of the local business owners club, which again, not what it's called, but you know what I'm talking about. And they hold events there. So going there could like going to events like that could be could be like a double opportunity for you because maybe there's a commercial opportunity there and maybe there's a residential opportunity there.
Mm-hmm.
Country clubs,
Definitely.
another good place. And whether that's a business
Mm-hmm.
expense or not, like just finding, basically like finding places where people tend to spend more money is going to be a good place to target for the high-end residential clients. But,
Wait,
for there, obviously you're not going there and pitching yourself. You're just going there to introduce yourself, build relationships and build up that network because people there, even if they're not your client today, they probably know someone who could be, and they might be your client, 5 years down the line.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
how much of
It works.
that have you been doing? Yeah.
Not that
Yeah.
much. Not that much.
Yeah.
But we know that we have to start working on it. Yeah. No, not that much, but we have done a little bit. We have been calling people. We have been telling that sometimes we just don't differentiate ourselves from real architects, and we just call a contractor or someone else and tell them that we just want to bring more clients to the firm. And when they refer to someone else is when they say, okay, well, this is Baasch Gallegos. Because Jim also told us that that's an opportunity for us to use his network. He's open about it. He's our mentor. As I told you, he's our client, but he's also a friend. He's also a mentor. And it's like we are the next generation of real architects.
Yeah.
Somehow we are.
Well, that's awesome. Then that's a huge opportunity. Then I would,
Yeah.
I would maybe even lean into that first, right? Lean
Mm-hmm.
into his existing network with that warm outreach to build those relationships. I mean, I would be shocked because if that's an established network, right? Those are established relationships.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I'd be really surprised if you can, garner 3 to 10 meetings, with potential people like out of that. And that's really cool because, with the size of your firm today and the work that you want to focus on, we're not talking about a huge amount of projects that you need on an annual basis, even to continue scaling and growing, right? We're talking about 5 to 10 ish, right? And that's both high-end residential and, maybe there's 2 commercial and 8 high-end residential projects in there or something like that. It's like, it doesn't take that many. And so if you think about, what your win rate is and how many people you actually have to have conversations with to make that happen on an annual basis, I think it's very achievable. Like you two can definitely do this, right? Because you're just talking about, hey, out of every 10 people that we have a conversation with, maybe we win 2 of those projects, right? So then out of that, you need to have basically 50 conversations every single year. And out of those 50 conversations, you're going to get 10, 15 projects. Like that's pretty realistic. Like you can do that, right?
We need to figure out what is our rate of conversion.
Yeah.
For goals. But yes, we need to make that count back and definitely be more proactive because I feel that myself and then Linda have been kind of afraid of just calling people that I don't know. But I know that I have to break that, I don't know, barrier that I put to myself and start calling people. Yes, I know that. To be more consistent because sometimes there are weeks in which, yes, I call 3, 4 people, but others that I call 0. So
that's right. Yeah, put a time block on your calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Same time every week, and maybe that's 2 or 3 hours that you're spending either making the phone calls or sending emails or building lists of people to reach out to, right? Because if you just do that, and you can also do that on LinkedIn. Like make a goal of sending 5 connection requests a day, or 10 connection requests a day, and then you'd be following up with them the next day just to introduce yourself. It's remarkable how easy it is to experience the compound effects of business development if you're able to stay consistent with it, right? Because if you're talking about making 10 to 20 calls a week, right, which you can definitely do. Yeah, I mean, you can make 20 calls in like an hour if you're really focused on it, right? So if you're doing that every single week, you'd probably be able to book a meeting with a potential partner at least once a week or at least once every 2 weeks, right? So then you're talking about 2 to 4 conversations, potential partners that could be larger pipelines. It's like, it just becomes like an exponential, kind of growth and network effect after that. So I think there's definitely a part of that, you want to be consistent with that outreach. You want to make sure that you're setting aside time aside to do that. And also, by the way, in the studio, I have a cold call script. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but there's a whole growth hack on cold calling that you can check out, that I share the script that you can use to make those calls, by the way.
Awesome. I'll go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the studio is amazing. I have to be more consistent with it as well.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate you being there. And I think you've dropped one of the most valuable things in the forum up to this point, which is where you shared the template that you use right now for your proposals when you're reaching out to clients. And I know that so many people found that useful. But yeah, I'd be curious to think of to hear what your experience has been in the studio so far, and what you would say to other architecture leaders that are considering joining.
It's been great so far, yes. And I'll definitely leave you a nice review at the end of the week.
All right, thank you so much for being a Growth Architect and listening in on this actionable episode. Be sure to subscribe so you can continue to learn exactly how to overcome the business challenges that every architect faces. And if you want a taste of what's inside the studio, then go to growtharchitect.com/join to subscribe to the Growth Architect newsletter read by more than 10,000 architecture leaders every Sunday morning. I'll see you in the next episode.